The man lives in the tombs, has lived there for years. No one goes near that graveyard anymore, not after dark, not even in daylight if they can avoid it. They've tried to bind him. Iron chains, multiple men holding him down. It never works. He snaps the chains like thread, throws grown men aside like children, then runs back to the graves, screaming, cutting himself with stones. The entire region knows about him. Mothers warn children. Merchants take longer routes. Fishermen avoid that stretch of coastline. And then one morning, a boat lands on the beach below the tombs. What happens in the next hour will result in the most expensive miracle in the Gospels, the most bizarre demon negotiation ever recorded, and a question that has puzzled readers for 2,000 years. Why would demons beg to enter pigs? This is the story of the Gerasene demoniac, and the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. You'll discover why this man lived in tombs and what that meant in Jewish culture. You'll understand the military significance of the word legion in occupied territory. You'll see why 2,000 pigs drowning represented a theological statement, not just collateral damage. By the end, you'll know why the demon's desperate plea reveals something profound about spiritual warfare, why the locals begged Jesus to leave after he healed their neighbor, and why this encounter represents one of the most direct confrontations between Jesus and demonic forces in all of Scripture. This isn't just about an exorcism. This is about what demons fear most, why they negotiate when cornered, and what one man's liberation cost an entire community. Mark 5:2 identifies him with haunting specificity. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. From the tombs. The Greek word mnemion means burial caves, sepulchres. In Jewish culture, according to historical records and Levitical law, tombs were the ultimate unclean places. Contact with the dead rendered you ritually impure. Living among corpses? Unthinkable. But this man made his home there. Mark 5:3-5 paints the picture. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Superhuman strength, self-destruction, social isolation, complete dehumanization. The location matters. The Gerasenes, the region across the Sea of Galilee from Jewish territory, Gentile land, pagan territory. According to archaeological evidence and historical sources, this was the Decapolis region, heavily influenced by Greek and Roman culture, which explains the pigs. Jews didn't raise pigs, Levitical law forbade it, but Gentiles did. And according to Mark 5:11, there were a lot of them. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. Luke 8:30 adds the critical detail about how many demons possessed this man. When Jesus asks his name, the response chills. Legion, for we are many. Legion, a Roman military term. One legion contained approximately 6,000 soldiers. In occupied Judea and surrounding regions, Roman legions represented oppression, violence, occupation. The word alone carried weight: political, military, spiritual. Mark 5:6-7 captures the confrontation. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." The demons recognized Jesus immediately, not just as a teacher or prophet, as Son of the Most High God. They know exactly who they're facing, and they're terrified. The Greek word used for torture is basanizo, torment, severe pain, the kind of torture used in interrogations. The demons aren't just asking to be left alone. They're begging not to be tormented. But here's what's fascinating. Mark 5:8 reveals Jesus had already given the command. For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." The exorcism had already begun. Jesus had spoken the authoritative word. The demons were being expelled, but they're trying to negotiate, bargain, delay. Verse 10 makes it explicit. And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. Not just out of the man, out of the area, the region, the territory. Why? What did they fear about being sent away? The parallel account in Matthew 8:29 adds another layer. Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? Before the appointed time? The demons know there's a final judgment coming. They know their ultimate fate, but they're trying to stay operational as long as possible. Geographic location seems to matter in spiritual warfare. And then they make the strangest request in all of Scripture, a negotiation so bizarre that it sparked theological debate for centuries. Mark 5:11-12 records the demons' proposal. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them. Send us into the pigs." Why pigs? Why not just leave? Why negotiate at all? Here's what we know from the text and historical context. First, the demons prefer embodiment. They don't want to be disembodied spirits. Luke 11:24-26 describes unclean spirits wandering through arid places seeking rest when cast out. They desperately want to inhabit something. Second, they're bound by Jesus' authority. They can't just do what they want. They need permission. The text says they begged Jesus. The word is parakaleo, to call alongside, to earnestly entreat. These powerful beings capable of giving one man the strength of many are reduced to pleading with a Jewish carpenter. Third, pigs represent the ultimate unclean animal in Jewish thought. Leviticus 11:7 explicitly forbids eating pork. Pigs symbolize everything impure, everything outside the covenant. For demons, themselves unclean spirits, pigs might seem like a fitting habitat. But there's a deeper strategy here that most miss. According to Jewish apocalyptic literature from this period, demons understood territorial authority. They operated in specific regions, influenced specific cultures, maintained strongholds in certain areas. Being cast out of the region entirely meant losing their sphere of influence. Entering the pigs gave them a chance to stay, to remain in the area, to maintain some presence in Gerasene territory. Mark 5:13 records Jesus' response. He gave them permission. Two words in Greek, epitrepsin autois. He permitted them. Why? Why would Jesus allow demons to enter animals? Why not just cast them into the abyss they feared? The text doesn't explain his reasoning. It only tells us what happened next. And the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. 2,000 pigs, a massive herd. The Greek word used, dyskilioi, means exactly 2,000, not an estimate, a specific count. In first-century Gentile territory, according to economic historians, a herd this size represented enormous wealth. Pigs were valuable. 2,000 of them? Someone's life savings, multiple families' livelihoods, a significant portion of the region's economy. And in one moment, they're gone, stampeding into the sea, drowning, total loss. And the entire region is about to find out what it cost to have their neighbors set free. Before I explain why this economic disaster was actually a spiritual victory, a quick word. If these biblical narratives are revealing layers you never heard before, if you're discovering the real human drama behind Sunday school stories, subscribe now. One forgotten story every week. Don't miss the next one. Now, back to the beach. Because what happens when the pig herders report this to the city is going to shock you. Mark 5:14-15 captures the community's response. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons, sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Afraid. The Greek word is phobeo, terrified, alarmed, frightened, not grateful, not celebrating, afraid. The man who had terrorized their region for years now sits calmly, dressed, in his right mind, completely transformed. You'd think they'd be throwing a party. Instead, Mark 5:16-17 records, "Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. They begged him to leave." The same word used for the demons begging, parakaleo. The demons pleaded to enter the pigs. The people pleaded for Jesus to depart. Why? What scared them more than the demoniac ever did? The cost. 2,000 pigs represented more than just economic loss. It represented a fundamental disruption to their way of life, their economy, their comfort, their control. They'd learned to live with the demoniac. Awful as it was, they knew how to manage it. Avoid the tombs. Don't go near the graves. Problem contained. But this was unpredictable, expensive, dangerous to their established order. One man's freedom cost them their financial security, and they weren't willing to pay it. Think about the man's perspective. He spent years in torment, cutting himself, living in graves, isolated from every human relationship. And now he's free, whole, human again. And his neighbors want Jesus gone. Mark 5:18 adds a heartbreaking detail. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. He wanted to leave, to follow Jesus, to get away from these people who valued pigs more than his restoration. Jesus' response to the man's plea is unexpected. Mark 5:19. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. Go home. Stay here, in this place that rejected you, among these people who want me gone. Be my witness in the territory that fears me." It's not what the man wanted. After everything he'd suffered, after this miraculous liberation, he wanted to stay with Jesus, to be part of the inner circle, to leave this traumatic place forever. Jesus sends him back. Why? What's the mission? The text suggests a strategic placement. The Decapolis region, 10 Gentile cities influenced by Greek and Roman culture, needed witnesses to Jesus' power and mercy. This man would become that witness. His testimony would carry weight. Everyone knew him. They'd seen him at his worst. Superhuman strength, uncontrollable rage, complete dehumanization. Now they'd see him transformed. Mark 5:20 records what happened. So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. He became an evangelist, a living testimony, proof of Jesus' power over the darkest spiritual forces. But let's return to the central mystery. Why did the demons beg to enter the pigs? And why did Jesus allow it? Because the answer reveals something profound about spiritual warfare, about the value of a human soul, and about what happens when we prioritize economy over humanity. The demons' request to enter the pigs wasn't random. It was strategic desperation. They knew Jesus' authority was absolute. They couldn't resist. They couldn't fight. Their only option was negotiation. And even that required Jesus' permission. By entering the pigs, they achieved two things. They stayed in the region, at least temporarily, and they remained embodied, in animals rather than wandering disembodied. But here's what they didn't anticipate. The pigs would immediately rush to their destruction. Some scholars suggest the demons drove the pigs to suicide. Others propose the pigs, as unclean animals, couldn't bear hosting unclean spirits and sought death as escape. The text doesn't specify the mechanism, only the result, total destruction. The demons' strategy failed. They didn't stay in the region. They didn't maintain embodiment. They ended up exactly where they feared, cast out, powerless, defeated. Jesus permitted their request, knowing it would lead to their destruction. It was a demonstration of his complete authority over demonic forces. But there's another layer. The economic devastation, 2,000 pigs lost, served as a test for the community. What did they value more? Their neighbors' freedom or their financial security? They chose pigs. The same community that tolerated a man living in torment among corpses couldn't tolerate the cost of his freedom. Now comes the part that transforms this from an exorcism story into something that exposes deep truths about spiritual authority, human value, and what we're willing to sacrifice for others' freedom. Here's the deeper revelation hidden in this encounter. The word legion wasn't just a count of demons, it was a political statement. In occupied territory, hearing a man cry out "legion" would carry immediate resonance. Roman legions oppressed the region. Military occupation crushed local autonomy. This man embodied both spiritual and political oppression. His liberation represented freedom from both demonic and imperial power structures. Early church fathers saw profound symbolism here. Augustine wrote about this passage extensively, noting that the demons entering pigs, forbidden animals in Jewish law, represented impurity recognizing itself and choosing destruction over redemption. Medieval scholars debated the theological implications of demons negotiating with Jesus. Some argued it demonstrated their limited power. Others suggested it revealed Christ's strategic wisdom, granting a request that led to their destruction. But here's what strikes deepest. The community's response reveals something uncomfortable about human nature. We'll tolerate others' suffering if it doesn't cost us anything. We'll ignore the neighbor living in torment as long as our economy stays stable. We'll avoid the problem rather than pay the price to solve it. The Gerasenes weren't evil. They were practical, economic, realistic. They had families to feed, businesses to run, stability to maintain. But when Jesus brought freedom that disrupted their economy, they chose economy. The man's years of torment, acceptable. 2,000 pigs lost, unacceptable. Jewish tradition would later point to this story as evidence that Jesus cared more for one human soul than for any amount of property. The economic loss demonstrated the infinite value of human freedom. The demoniac of Gadara's story shows us something profound about liberation and cost. The demons begged to enter pigs because even powerful spiritual forces recognize ultimate authority when they encounter it. They could negotiate, plead, bargain, but they couldn't resist. Their desperation reveals that spiritual warfare has clear hierarchy, and Jesus stands at the top. The pig's destruction wasn't collateral damage, it was a demonstration. One human soul restored to dignity and sanity mattered more than 2,000 animals, more than economic stability, more than community comfort. If you're in bondage right now, to addiction, to patterns you can't break, to destructive cycles that have stolen years of your life, the demoniac's story whispers something. Liberation is possible, even when the chains seem unbreakable, even when you've been written off, even when you live in the tombs of your past failures. But here's the uncomfortable part. Freedom often costs something. Maybe not pigs, but something. Relationships that can't survive your healing, economies built on your brokenness, communities invested in keeping you contained rather than set free. The Gerasenes wanted Jesus gone because liberation disrupted their economy. Sometimes the people around you prefer your bondage to their discomfort. That doesn't mean freedom isn't worth it. The man went from living in tombs to living in the Decapolis as Jesus' witness, from cutting himself with stones to telling everyone who would listen about mercy and power. Your liberation matters more than anyone's economy. Your restoration is worth the cost, even when others disagree. The demoniac of Gadara encountered Jesus on a beach one morning. By afternoon, he was free, the demons were destroyed, 2,000 pigs were gone, and an entire community was terrified of the cost of liberation. He wanted to leave with Jesus. Jesus sent him back as a witness. And the Decapolis region would never forget the man who lived in tombs and came back human. If this story moved you, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Share it with someone who needs to hear that no bondage is stronger than the authority of Jesus. Leave a comment. Why do you think Jesus allowed the demons to enter the pigs? Whatever chains bind you right now, whatever tombs you're living in, whatever legion of forces keeps you isolated and self-destructive, remember the Gerasene demoniac. One encounter with Jesus changed everything. The demons fled, the pigs were a small price, and freedom was worth whatever it cost.